We're going inside the Gearbox here today on Airsoft Fun 01.
So here's the inside of our gearbox. Today we're looking at the version 3 gearbox. This is mainly found in the AK platform guns. And starting off, what we can see, let's look at the gearbox itself, the shell. Now, when you get gearboxes, they'll have one of two things. They'll either have bearings or bushings. Let's pop this one out. This is just a plastic one. This is the original bushing that was with it. A bushing is this. Some come in metal, some are plastic, but this is the plastic bushing. A bearing will actually have little metal balls in it, like little races, that the bearing would actually spin on inside this little hole. These bushings don't move, they just sit inside there. And a lot of times you would want a bushing for maybe a high FPS build. You'd use a bearing for a high speed build. Bearings help provide less tension, less restriction on the gears, but they lack in strength, whereas a bushing will provide more strength to hold the gears in place for a higher FPS build. But you have two different types of bearings and bushings. You got metal and plastic, but again, we have the plastic bushings inside this original version 3 gearbox. But starting off, we'll have our motor. Again, it's a version 3, so it has its own little cage that it sets in. Now this cage actually attaches to the gearbox. You can see through the cage, through the top, we have the two holes, where when it's aligned properly, a screw goes down through that, and then to the bottom part of the gearbox. But we're going to start off, as far as the internal parts, we have the pinion gear. The pinion gear is going to come in contact with our bevel gear right here. Again, it's a JG, as you can see on the gear, it's a JG. Now, this top part right here, as you can see that I'm running my thumb across, these teeth are what comes in contact with your pinion gear. So we're not going to talk about shimming tonight. Got my shims over here. Shimming is how you adjust the height of your gears to each other. And for me, when I shim, I want to shim this gear to the pinion gear. But we're not getting to that tonight. So we have our bevel gear. These teeth on the bottom right here that I'm touching, these are what contacts your pinion gear. You see this little lip right here. You see these little lips around the edge of it right here. These are what catches your cutoff lever that we have right here. These prevent the gears from spinning backwards. If they were spinning backwards, it'd put a bunch of unnecessary stress on the gearbox and either potentially break your gears or break your gearbox. But before you put this in, you have to put the second one in, and that's called the spur gear. Alright, the reason why it's called spur gear, it looks like the spurs that's on the back of those cowboy boots. So this will actually go in first if you're installing gears into your gearbox. So it goes right here in the middle. So your bevel gear goes in, and it sits in that first little hole right there and makes contact with your spur gear. So as you can see right now, if our pinion gear was inserted, as the motor turns, it turns the bevel gear, which turns spur gear. The third gear in the order goes right here, and it's called your sector gear. It's called a sector gear because only a section of it has teeth. I don't have to explain that, you can see that. Alright, so you have a couple parts to this. The top part, these top teeth right here, are what comes in contact with your piston teeth. So these teeth pull the piston back, and once it rotates all the way through, then once it comes to this point of the gear, the piston is then released from this gear and the spring will push the piston forward, but we'll get into that a little later. So you have the teeth, and right here we have the delayer chip. This little piece right here. This is what actually pushes your tappet plate back to allow your gun to feed another BB into the hop up. And on the bottom, this little triangle shape piece right here. This is for your cutoff. When you put your gun in a semi-automatic, that's where this engages. This slows down the gear as it comes with this little cutoff lever you see right here. This little cutoff lever will make contact with this, slowing the gear down, so that when you're in a semi-auto mode, you get one shot for one rotation. So, but anyway, this is the sector gear. It's going to go right into place, right there. So, again, we have everything loosely fitted, so some things might catch on each other. But as the motor turns, spins the bevel gear, which spins the spur gear, which spins our sector gear. As you can see, as I do that, spinning the sector gear. So once that's in line, next in the order we have here, we'll go ahead and we have our air cylinder. This is, some have a full air cylinder, which means it's not ported. This one is ported. So only the part from the bottom of this port to right here, you take the internal volume, that's all the air that your gun can shoot. So in a non-ported, which means you have this whole cylinder full of air that you could shoot. But it's a ported cylinder, and at the end of this goes your cylinder head. This is a double O-ring to help for a better seal. And you'll see these two little holes on the sides. These holes line up with these little divots you can see right there in the gearbox. So I'm going to put this on and set it in. Alright, now that everything is set in there, we would install our tappet plate. Alright, again, this is version 3, so this tappet plate, as it hits this, the delayer chip, it will push and pull. It will push this forward. Alright, it'll push and pull it, allowing it to feed BBs into the hop up. So on top of the tappet plate, we have our air nozzle. This inserts into the top of the tappet plate. Kind of hard to do with one hand, but we can do it. I think I can. There we go. It'll probably fall out on me. But this tappet plate and air nozzle, it gets installed over top of that with the cylinder head. So I'll probably go off camera for a second so I can install it. And all right, and we're back. Again, as you see, I'm not hooking the springs up. All right, I'm keeping it this way so I can freely move it without anything being under tension and popping everything out, because I don't have the other half of the gearbox on it. So normally you would hook the spring up. This spring would hook up to here. That spring down here would hook onto my trigger down here, but we're not getting into that. So as we can see, all right, so the spring would keep this under tension, pulling it forward. So as these spin, the delayer chip is hitting the tappet plate, pulling the tappet head back. You can see the nozzle moving back. So now a BB would be able to be pushed up, and it would be sitting right here. And as it spins, all right, after it's that, remember the spring would be pulling it forward, so it would slide back forward as the gear goes away from it. And again, that pushes the BB into the hop up and holds it. And there, normally at this point, you can see right here where the teeth are. No, it's at the last contact point where it's touching that gear. And right there, it would fire. So this is all the way forward into the hop up, holding the BB in there. And so when your piston goes forward, that is in direct contact with the BB. And this is what, the arrow comes out here, and is what propels the BB forward. So we see that. So remember, we got the motor, pinion gear, spins the bevel gear, spins the spur gear, which spins the sector gear. We have the delayer chip, which functions the tappet plate and the air nozzle. So next in our line, we'd have our piston. All right, this had one metal tooth. That's for the pickup tooth. So, sorry, no, that's down here. Pickup down here. So, this would go in here. Let me move my gear out of the way a little bit. This installs in here. And the piston, you see the little grooves on the side. Your gearbox has this little lip channel. You can see it. The tip of my finger right there. That these grooves sit in to help keep the gearbox straight. So you can see as the piston is moving, it's making contact with those gears. Again, this isn't where the piston will be located to the gears. I'll actually show that here in a second. I just want to get the piston all the way in there. There we go. So piston's in. Remember, the piston will be under spring pressure. There will be a spring right here pushing the piston always forward. Always try and push it forward. But as these spin, la-da-da-dee, you see it'll pick up. Now remember, everything's going to be closed and shut. So everything will sit nice and flush down there. It picks it up. Kind of a pain in the butt. Let's see if I can just try to hold that in place. So I'm going to mimic the top of the gearbox. So it's going to spin it, pull the piston back. Remember, the piston will be under pressure from the spring. It moves it back, and the spring is being compressed more and more in the back. More and more. Do-do-do. And we're going. And we're almost to the end of our cycle. And right there. Now look, remember the spring is compressed all the way back in here. So the spring is all coiled up right inside here. So at this point, it would release the tension on the spring, and this would fire forward. At this point, see the piston head at this point is creating compression. And all that air compressed is firing out that air nozzle. So next you would have your spring that just installs right in the back of the piston all the way in. And then you have your spring guide. This is a cheap little plastic one. Again, it's all the original parts from it, but this is your piston guide, which help keeps your piston straight as it's under pressure and not twisting and binding up. So give me 1 second, and I'll go ahead and set everything in there so you can see how it should look. One go. Now you can see, even as of right now with it fully released, that spring is under pressure. I'm holding the cylinder down to prevent everything from flying out. So there's that. Now at this point, you would want to throw the, I didn't put my anti-reversal latch in there. So, but you would take this anti-reversal latch and insert it right there in that little hole. And this part of it is what comes in contact with the back side of that gear. Like we looked earlier, see if it'll focus. It won't. But remember the little ledges that we saw on the bottom of that bevel gear? That's where the anti-reversal latch catches to prevent the gears from going backwards. So there you go. There's your gearbox. Again, version 2, version 3, version 6 are all very much the same. The only difference between a version 6 and this one, other than the shape, as I hold the phone as I move it, the motor is located back there with a different shape, obviously different shaped gearbox. And my anti-reversal latch is actually over here. So, and obviously the trigger difference. But as far as the gears and your piston, your cylinder head, and everything else like that, you know, that's exactly how they're all laid out. But there you go. I'm going to release this from its tension. And there you go. Right there is your version 3 gearbox, the breakdown of it, how I put it back together, and how everything works. So, again, I didn't talk about, you know, the selector switch, you know, that differs from version to version. So I didn't want to get too much into that. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything I might have missed, or if I was wrong on something, call me out in the comment section below. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Have a good night.